everyone. Hope everyone is well. I am so excited to be introducing this panel today. It's a subject that is obviously near and dear to my heart. I am the editorial lead of Forbes, the Culture at Forbes, which is our official community aimed at creating equitable pathways for Black and Brown professionals. And the title of this panel is actually the same title of what we are working on, an ongoing initiative really shedding light on the current state of Black entrepreneurship, which happens to be the title of this panel. And no better people to shed light on that than two active, successful Black entrepreneurs in the game. I will be quiet and let you two introduce yourselves, talk a little bit about what your company is, what its function is. Abbey, let's start with you.
Thanks a lot, Brianne. Such a delight to be here and just share our experience with everyone. So at a high level, our company essentially works with large multifamily owners and operators, and financial institutions. And we do three things. We help them report on-time rental payments into the credit rating agencies to help residents establish or build their credit scores. And number two, for residents that can afford to pay their rent, we pair them up with a loan paid directly to their landlord so they are not evicted, and as a society, we're not solving homelessness backwards. And then for the landlord themselves, we provide some predictive risk. So that's what we do at Esusu. We're in 1.4 million rental units in all 50 states in the country.
Nice.
Arabian, you're up.
Yeah, I'm Arabian Prince, one of the founding members of the rap group NWA, but also been in the tech space for about 40 years. I'm a lot older than I actually look, but I feel old. Don't worry about that. But anyway, I own a company called Innovate Next, Open Labs, and our focus is on inner city growth, inner city kids, inner city companies, people, anybody who's trying to get into the tech space or the entertainment space or the gaming space. We help them try to find funding. We help them with like an incubator type thing. We have a new company called Incubate Next, which is helping raise capital for inner city communities and startups and things like that. So yeah, I'm all about inner city and rising us up to get us into the same playing field as everyone else.
Thank you both for introducing yourselves, and perfect timing, Amani. You came on at an amazing time. Would you just introduce yourself to the audience and talk a little bit about your company and its function?
Certainly. No, yeah. So super excited to be here. Apologies. It seems I was right on time, so late apologies on being a little bit behind, but I'm on it. I'm an investor with Garrett Ventures. We're a $10 million pre-seed fund focused on investing outside the major tech hubs of Silicon Valley, New York, Massachusetts. Working alongside general partner McKeever Conwell in those efforts. I have a backdrop of being a prior founder, now turned funder, been in this ecosystem for the last 8 years or so. Post undergrad, took some time, worked in the political realm, understood how much I love policy, hate politics, and wanted to get back to my roots of ensuring that we can connect the dots between policy and the people in which it's written for. So found myself within private equity, started my master's exploring this ecosystem. We started working on the fund back in 2019, moving into 2020. And at this point in time, in the afternoons, I worked with Rare Breed. And during the day, I managed a partnership team with a company called Main Street. And we're helping startups find and claim tax credits. So it's a bit about me, excited to be here and look forward to the conversation.
Thank you so much for sharing. I love that we have a wide array of perspectives, the VC perspective. We also have the founder perspective. I'm on you with a little bit of both, so that's great. So I want to pose this first question, and it's pretty general, but I think it could be answered in a variety of ways. When you think of, answering this question, what is the state of Black entrepreneurship? How would you answer that in your own words? It could be whatever comes to mind first. Amani, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about what is the state of Black entrepreneurship, I get really excited. I get really excited to continue to see the innovation, and I kind of think of like now's the time, right? That's kind of what I think about when I think of the state of Black entrepreneurship. I'm seeing so many amazing founders moving. We look across the venture ecosystem and we see how fluid capital's been at an unprecedented rate, seeing the amount of unicorns that have arisen. There's obviously the caveat that always follows, but who is that money going to? But I'm excited to see that there's been several Black-led unicorns. I'm excited to see that there is just rampant opportunity, and quite honestly, in a lot of sectors, shout out to Pop Smoke, right? Like there's a lot of space to shake the room a little bit. And a lot of founders have the opportunity to go and change ecosystems and industries that have pre-existent and been around for decades, right? Haven't had change, and seeing founders day in and day out going to solve those challenges, like I'm excited. I think the state of Black entrepreneurship is exciting.
Thank you for that thorough answer. Arabian, when you think of the state of Black entrepreneurship, what comes to mind?
Yeah, so I'm really excited for the simple fact that it's now what we call an aha moment. You know what I mean? Like, aha, I can do that. Like, especially because of COVID, because when COVID hit, it kind of put everybody on the same playing field. Big companies were shut down, startups were shut down, everybody shut down. So now it's kind of like everybody's back in their infancy trying to survive. And it actually helped the inner city and the Black communities because they're like, oh, wait a minute, that big company over there, that's a multi-billion-dollar company, is now struggling because they can't operate. So it gives me an opportunity to become an entrepreneur, to figure out my lane, to figure out like that little sliver of newness. Like, okay, I can fit right here because this big company can't tackle this, but I can come in and do a little bit. And I think it's like I said, it's an aha moment. And people are now realizing that they can be not only a person who's out seeking a job, they can actually be the person that creates the jobs and be the company that grows and hires other people in the inner city. So, yeah.
No, I like that. Abbey, let's turn to you. State of Black entrepreneurship, what thoughts come to mind?
When I think about the state of Black entrepreneurship, I think the word that comes to mind for me is ever evolving. And the reason why I said ever evolving is the base we start up from was not quite great, right? So we had, if you look at venture capital, for example, capital going to Black investors or even entrepreneurs is less than 3% of what's been allocated in the marketplace. If you think about pension plans, right, even for the successful Black firms out there like Brown Capital, etc., right, the money they are managing is infinitesimal compared to the larger pile. Regardless, there's still some encouraging things we need to think about in the marketplace, right? We're seeing billionaires from people like Rihanna, right? We saw Jay-Z exit a whole bunch of companies, including Tidal. So it's encouraging and ever evolving, but the base we started from is not encouraging. So to that end, what we need to do as a community is, what are some of the tactical things we need to have in place to make sure that ever-evolving nature is trending in the positive direction, not net negative.
Yeah, on that note, all of you three seem to have, your bottom line seem to be, authentically aimed at bettering your communities, underrepresented communities specifically. But when we're talking about Black and Brown founders who are trying to authentically and organically weave in sort of culturally minded, social minded, equitably minded veins within their companies, what are some ways in which that can happen organically? What are some ways in which you guys are weaving that into your bottom line every day at your companies?
It's an interesting thing because there's several ways you can actually go about it, right? Like I think by nature of I am a Black man and my communities and microcosms that I'm within happen to be very diverse. It just naturally, organically happens because it's who I am. And I think that's the part of inclusivity, right? Like that becomes a huge piece of D&I really across the board in making that like just a part of your personality. So it just naturally happens. But I think setting processes in place, and these are things that we're continuously doing well with Main Street, and I can speak to it from a different perspective of we hired a head of people very early and prioritize ensuring that there is a culture that not only kind of looked for culture fits, but specifically look for culture adds. And I think having the proactive notion of like, we want people to add to our culture and continuously work within the team, all the above, and knowing that people who can add are going to come from different places and being very open to finding ways to be inclusive and understanding that you have to be hyper intentional about opening those channels, keeping those channels open, and actively pursuing those channels to get a diverse subset of individuals into your company and organization. So I think there's several ways to go about it, but those are some of the things that we've seen and naturally just happen for me.
Yeah, and I would say that, for me, it's all about enlightening people that don't understand or don't know or think they know. And, like I deal with a lot of companies like the Microsofts and the Intels, a lot of the big tech companies that are very much into inclusion and diversity. But sometimes when you go to them and you see the plans or the programs that they have, you kind of go, huh? Like, that's what you're doing? Like, you guys are way off. You know what I mean? And it looks good on paper. It looks good when they do the commercials. You know what I mean? Like, hey, we here at so-and-so company, look at what we're doing. And then you look around in the real inner cities or the real Black and brown communities, you don't see it. It's kind of like this blip that they're focusing on, and they go, that's enough. So I go in and I'm a disruptor, like especially coming from the rap group NWA, I can say stuff like that other people can't say, and a buddy of mine, Ice-T, is the same way. We can say things that are not maybe politically correct or, corporate correctness or whatever. We go in and tell it like it is and, kind of shake them up a little bit. And that's what I think we got to do now is kind of shake up a lot of the bigger companies and the bigger, even companies that are out there that are giving back, like a lot of and I'm so brain dead. That's what happens when you get 55 and a half years old. Like you start losing stuff in your head. But anyway, like the charity organizations who are giving back, you got to kind of go, look, you need to be more in touch with the people who really know where to put this stuff, really know how to grow the communities, really know how to like go in. There's gold in these kids' minds or these young adults' minds that have these ideas and concepts that they want to create, but they don't have the opportunity. They don't have the resources. You say you're giving them resources, but it never really trickles down in the spaces that it should be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can just add to what Arabian Pins and Amani sort of highlighted, which are all fantastic points. The way I think about it is really threefold. It's really focused on what I like to, what is out there, particularly on the three Ps. The number one P is people, right? People are the most important assets across the board, whether within companies, our own company at Esusu, and our manifesting that, being intentional about the hiring process, right? If we're a company that's venture backed and it's hard to find Black engineers, shame on us, right? We need to go above and beyond to make sure our community is representative of what we've built and not perpetuate the status quo. And the same thing also happens anyone we're engaging with, vendors, right? How do we choose vendors from a diversity standpoint is also utterly important, particularly if they're coming from our own community. Number two is essentially purchasing, right? So it ties perfectly into the people sort of piece. Who are we buying from? Who are we engaging with? And who are we even allowing to invest in our company? When we raised our last round of financing, 76% of the money that came from it came from Black folks, right? When we do our next round of financing, it's probably going to be led by someone that looks like us. So being intentional about the capital and going out there as a company, outperforming and showing those results is important. And the last piece that Arabian Pins touched on, which I think is quintessential, is philanthropy, right? There's a lot of things that capital can move, but philanthropy is a quintessential role for us to move the agenda of our people forward. So as we think about philanthropy, what are we investing our money in? What are some of the community projects that we are involved in? Because just public and private capital won't get everything done. We also have to contribute our own humble quota. So that's how I say it. And the way it feels within our company is exactly those framework. Are we hiring diverse people, particularly Black folks, to move the frontiers of this vision forward? Are we buying, right, from diverse vendors? Not just saying they are food vendors, but consulting businesses who's handling our media, right? All those service jobs that play a big role. Number three then becomes, are we investing our cash? What other projects are we involved in? And if we're intentional about those three things on a large scale, there's no limit to how far we can go and continue to have impact in the lives of the folks we care about.
Big sort of thing out in what you said, the perfect segue to the next question is the idea of intention in your team, in your extended team, that being the VCs who you're allowing access to your company, who are investing in your company. And I think one of sort of the themes of this year in this project has been that Black entrepreneurs are in a lot of ways in the catbird seat, right? Like there are a lot of ways in which VCs are looking at Black entrepreneurs, and there's this sort of desire, right, to invest in what is disruptive and what is sort of culturally oriented. But on the other hand, how, as Black entrepreneurs, are you making sure that you are being intentional about the VCs that you're allowing into your company? What are the things you look for in potential investors, and how are you holding them accountable and making sure that their bottom lines are aligned with yours? We'll start with Abby. We'll start with you. Or no, Amani, go ahead and pick it up.
Cool. No, I mean, that's fine. So I think doing your due diligence, I am a proponent of something as much as investor founder fit, right? I think that is equally as important as finding product market fit and all the above. And looking at track records and like, what have VCs actually done? Like, look at the actions, like, and you can oftentimes clearly tell. If you see a fund that says, yes, we invest pre-revenue, great, right? That's easy to type onto the website. How many checks have you written pre-revenue, and why did you write those checks, right? Like understanding the anatomy of their no's, understanding the anatomy of their yeses is super important, and having conversation with some of their founders, right? Like we saw through the last year and a half, right? Like there's been a lot of great wordplay, great commitments. It seems awesome, but what does the follow through look like, right? Like this is why I'm glad we have Sherelle and TP Insights, right, to track all of these things and keep a note. But check, like really talk to the people around those investors. And I think optionality is a thing like almost never before. There's a variety of options to kind of raise capital in some fashion, whether it be non-dilutive, whether it be going through crowd equity, whether it be going through VC, right? And I love that founders are taking on the choice as opposed to saying like, yes, I have to get capital from anybody. You don't, right? Get people that you want to be in a relationship with. Get money from people that you want to work with, who are truly going to support you through and through. And look back at the actions of what are people actually done on top of what they've said, because it's in this ecosystem there is 100% a lot of great words, right? And platitudes are far too many to count. But track records, accountability, and the communities will let you know, right? I think that's been the added benefit of community is people will let you know, and you have so much insight into the real world and the day-to-day and how a lot of these partners are actually thinking. So I always advocate doing your diligence on the funds in which you want to raise capital from and holding to that, right? Because there's new funds being built each and every day, and there's new ways to raise money and generate revenue, all the above, right? Just maintain that.
Go ahead, Abby.
Yeah, happy to jump in here because this is kind of our wheelhouse, finding VCs that are intentional. In some cases, before we let people come into our company, we date them for like 2-3 years. So because when you let people invest in your company, it's a marriage, right? These folks are also involved and they have certain rights. Some of them might sit on your board. So the intentionality needed is important, because if you have a certain vision, at Esusu, our company focuses on leveraging the power of data to bridge the racial wealth gap, right? That's what we're doing. If you have an investor that doesn't focus on that kind of vision, then you're setting yourself up for failure, right? It's like building a mansion on a sinking sand, right? Which is not what you want. And certain investors also are what we call the empty barrels that make the empty barrel makes the loudest noise. There are certain people that are out there saying, we're doing this, we're doing that. And the truth is, some of them look like you and I, right? So we just need to be very, very intentional about what is rhetoric, like Amani rightfully said, and what is your track record. And then once you can divide that and really discern, you can say, well, I can let you be in the company, because we're talking about the statistics that is not necessarily with us, right? Less than 5% is coming to us, or less than 3%, whatever it is. It's still infinitesimal, right? We need to make sure we're taking capital from the right people so we can outperform. they can help us out and continue to grow. So next time someone says, I want to invest in Arabian Prince's idea or Amani's idea, or Isaac's idea, or Brianne's idea, there's a track record in terms of Black people outperforming. Like Jay-Z selling Tidal should be the norm. Like Rihanna being a $1 billion company should be like, well, where's the next $10 billion company for Black entrepreneurs? That's the mindset we got to be in, but we need investors that are also on that wavelength, and that's how we move forward. So that's how we essentially look at it at Esusu. And one thing it's important to also highlight, it takes a collective. And I can shout out some of the investors that we've had the opportunity to work with, like Concrete Rose, amazing folks. They do it day in, day out. Zero Capital Partners, Impact America Fund. All these funds out there are just doing the right thing, trying to make sure entrepreneurs can grow, folks that look like us, and continue to expand. And there's no doubt it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when we outperform and continue to deliver on our promise of $100 billion companies. So I'm forever optimistic on this one.
Yeah, I love what you said about we dated them for a while. Date them, feel them out, get a feel. I love that. Isaac, I'd love to introduce you and get you in on the conversation, but I'll let Arabian kind of chime in, get his perspective on this, and then we'll work you in, if that's okay.
No problem. Yeah, so it's funny you mentioned dating. So that's my vision on this whole thing. It's VCs and startups. It's like a boyfriend girlfriend thing. And you got to check the tendencies. You know what I mean? You got to kind of look at like what a VC does is they go, ooh, there's a pretty girl. Let's go date her. And they'll come date you for a while. And then as they're working with you, they're giving you some money. And then they see another pretty girl. And they're like, ooh. And the pressure comes on you now. Like, hey, you guys need to perform over here. You need to give us more of this and more of that. You didn't say that in the beginning. You didn't tell me to wash the dishes when we first hung out. Like now I got to wash the dishes. I got to wash the clothes. I got to clean the house. What's going on here? They found another date and they trying to pressure you to do what you can do so they can get their money out and move it over here. So like you guys said, it's looking at the trends and the tendencies of the VCs, what they do with other companies. And before you jump the wagon, because all money is not good money. And you really got to focus on what you're getting and what the baggage is that comes with the money that you're getting. And also, the last thing I'll say about that is too, if you really, really look at it, you said 3 to 5% of the money comes to us. That's not a lot. But if you really break it down, it's
lower.
It's a lot lower. It's like 1% or 0.5% once you really start looking at the 3 to 5%, because you're like, I don't want that money, and I'm not a political person, but that's Donald Trump people money. We don't want to take that because they're just doing it to make them look better. Like, oh, look what we did over here for the Black community or the inner city community. You really got to focus on the real reasons. Do they really want to help? Do they really want to help you scale? Do they really want to help you grow so that you can pass it on? So, yeah.
Exactly. Isaac, love to get you in on the mix. Would love if you just start off by introducing yourself, tell us a little about the company, its function, and then I will pass the mic over to you to kind of close out this round. But if you could start by introducing yourself, that'd be great.
Sure. My name is Isaac Hayes III. I am founder and CEO of Fanbase. Fanbase is a social media platform that allows any user to monetize their content via subscription or virtual currency we call love. So you can have followers and subscribers on the same platform. And every vertical of content creation is monetizable by any user the moment they sign up. I crowdfunded my platform on Start Engine to the tune right now of about $3.3 million. Our raise closes at $3.5 million. And I'm new to the game, so this is my first tech startup, and happy to be here.
Well, then I want to kind of flip the script a little bit and talk about the process of crowdfunding. Why did you choose to go that route, and the success that you found there, and so maybe even the challenges that you faced crowdfunding that you had to overcome?
Crowdfunding actually, I guess, was a timing situation. It worked out in my interest because at the time I was going to actually raise funds and considering VC, like I had incorporated in Delaware and created a term sheet, convertible note, stuff like that. And then COVID hit and you couldn't travel. And then not long after that, George Floyd happened and Black Lives Matter movement, kind of took over, the entire world. And all of a sudden, Black founders are like the rage. Like, we need to, find Black people to invest in. So a good friend of mine, Monique Idolette, suggested you should consider crowdfunding on a platform called Start Engine. I remember that because of another friend of mine who I've known 11, 12 years now, Dawn Dixon. She's crowdfunded on Start Engine 3 times and raised $1 million 3 times. So I know the process and got familiar with the Jobs Act and how advantageous that regulation is for people who are trying to fund their businesses. So I got accepted to Start Engine and launched my campaign. And then the SEC upped the regulation that you could raise up to 5 million instead of 1. I decided to increase my raise to 3.5 million so I could get more people to invest in the company, because the primary investors in my company are the general public, and they are users of social media. So there's no better person to invest in your company than the people that actually use the platform and become advocates and surrogates for what you're doing.
Super interesting concept. And shout out to Monique Idolette, very good friend of Forbes Culture Family, advisory board member, love her. So I wanted to talk about, we talk a lot about funding, which naturally is one of the #1 challenges that Black entrepreneurs continue to face. But there are a lot more challenges. So when we talk about the state of entrepreneurship, I want to talk about the holistic picture when we talk about challenges. So I want to go around and ask you all to identify a story. It can be funding related, but I'd love to sort of branch out and hear from you about some other challenges that you faced. For example, we spoke to, as part of our project, a few founders, and one of the challenges that were identified was really interesting, was this idea of credibility and marketing properly to our communities while still being positioned and viewed as a credible company that is universally strong. So I think that's something when we talk about problems that Black entrepreneurs face was interesting to hear and was very candid and honest. So I'd love to go around and hear from each of you. What's a challenge that you face, like a candid challenge that you faced as you continue to grow your company, and how are you looking to overcome that? We'll start with let's start with Arabian.
Yeah, for me, it's been a little bit easier because of the background that I come from, in entertainment and the name associations I have, the Dr. Dre's and Ice Cube. So, but you still find yourself being the stepchild or the younger kid in the room when you should be respected as an equal to some college kid startup company with a suit and a tie, So, the offers that we would get for a project are maybe 1/10 of what somebody else who knows nothing is getting. You know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, we'll throw 10 million at it. And then you look at some other, how are they getting $100 million and this dude just got out of Harvard? Or what? It's because he went to Harvard? Aha! That's what it is. He went to Harvard, he has a tie and he's got a suit on, and he's got a debt that's crispy clean. But as we all know, what is it? Maybe only 5% or 8%. It might be different now, but 8% of all startups succeed. So you're looking at billions of dollars down the tube just because of perception and not really looking at the person and what this person can bring to the table. So, that's been my downside and what I see out there. But what I tell founders and what I tell, investors, you got to look at the hustle. You got to look at, why did Jay-Z get to where he's at? You know what I mean? It's because they're used to working with nothing, and they go out and they hustle and they build and they build and they build. So who do you want to give your money to? Somebody that knows how to hustle and take that money and build it into something big, or somebody who's going to take a chunk of money and spend it on a waterfall wall and some slides and some other stuff in their new office and stuff like that. So kind of look at it that way.
That's real. I can second that. Well, I mean, race is a challenge, right? Race is a challenge. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, where I think upwards of 25% of all Black tech is located, all Black tech founders and people in the tech industry. And yeah, ideas get funded on napkins for non-Black people. Like, oh, you have an idea? Here's $10 million. How many users do you have? Well, we don't have users. Okay, here's 10 million anyway. The scrutiny that we come under as Black founders is you have to go above and beyond. For me, you know, I bootstrapped my MVP for Fanbase myself. And I think that I knew that I wasn't allowed to come to the stage mediocre if I was going to look for money, even crowdfunding on Start Engine. So I built the platform and then didn't even tell anybody that I built it for a year because I didn't really want to color the tech with myself. And two, I didn't want people to say, hey, you know, the only reason people downloaded this app is because you told them to do it. So I needed, you know, uncorrupted data that no one could refute the fact that I had a proof of concept that was working without any assistance of myself monetarily. I didn't run ads. I didn't do anything. I just let people discover the platform and then figure out if they could make revenue. And so we have that bias. You know, we have to go above and beyond. Like some of the platforms that are out right now that are competitors in my marketplace, even the product that exists today, if I came in any meeting with that product, I would get laughed out of the room. I would get like, there's no way. So we have to perform above and beyond. And definitely, I think, you know, people like Arabian and myself, like we definitely come from the space and the place where you know both sides of the game, right? You know the business, but then you know the street. So when you can live in both worlds, that's dangerous because, you know, it used to be that corporate America would have to find a go-between to mediate that relationship between tech and urban culture. But now we have people like Jay-Z that have developed into businessmen that they're both. So they're really like the daywalker of entrepreneurs, you know. They have the best of both worlds and they have those relationships on both sides of the game. So they make them the most powerful and I think potentially successful people in the game.
I agree in following. I mean, first one, Isaac, congrats, right, on the success with Start Engine and fan base crowdfunding. I think that's absolutely amazing.
Thanks.
But like we could spend all day talking about like berries, all day, like perfectly fine. But I think one of the biggest things that I've come across is the lack of social and cultural competency, right? Like it's just not aligned. Oftentimes when Black founders and diverse founders have phenomenal ideas, right? Amazing work being done. If the people on the other side of the table have no understanding of what that is, and a story that sticks with us with our fund, one of the first founders that we invested in, genius Black woman, right? She went to the John Hopkins. She did all the nice things on paper that you're supposed to be able to do, and it took her over about 2 years in which she couldn't get any capital at all, right? She couldn't raise anything, and she ended up having to become a surrogate mother just to get enough money to get half of the MVP build, right? Like not even enough to do the whole MVP, but like just half, because no VC saw the opportunity and no VC understood, you know, she was basically and is creating a hair dryer that can dry your hair without heat, right? For a lot of us, like, yo, we get that simultaneously, right? But a lot of times, one of the toughest things that I found when I was even working in the venture space and I was working with non-diverse funds, it was like, hey, I see this dope opportunity. There's a huge market that's here. This founder's like doing the work, right? But you also can't expect this founder to just turn around and like, yo, we got 500K in the back. We're just going to bootstrap 500K and I'm going to ask a couple of my friends and we'll get 2 million raised in 2 or 3 seconds, right? Not a problem. Like that's not how it is, right? That's just not reality. But the expectation that that is reality for everyone and not understanding the distinctions between like how life fundamentally is different and the opportunities that are there, I think that's probably one of the toughest barriers to get across. Because if you're not open to being taught at the same time, you won't. And that's a really tough barrier there. So I think exactly as Isaac, exactly as everyone has really kind of spoken towards, it's being able to connect the dots, right? I think crowdfunding opens up the doors where And that's what I love so much about crowdfunding, is that you can say no to VCs because you got a community who gets it. You got a community who wants to be on board. You got a community who wants to support you because you're a Black founder, right? You want a community who wants to see more Black women win, right? Like that's dope to have communities as customers, and your investors and customers, like they're locked in for life. That can be more valuable than some funds that you're going to come across, to keep it 100, right? So that's cool to me. And where I'm super excited about kind of how the future unravels. I'm a venture partner with Republic, and I'm super bullish, continuously seeing diverse founders take advantage of this. You can raise up to $5 million now. Like that's no nominal amount, right? Like that's significant to get things started, right? And the process and how you can get that stuff done. Like there's more options coming. The venture landscape over the next 1.5 to 2 years is fundamentally going to shift, and I'm happy that it is. There's a lot of change that's needed. But overall, right, when you look at how much Black people and diverse founders across the board on the investor perspective, or even on the founder side, right, we are such a fractional piece of this entire ecosystem across the entire world, right? Like you look at private equity as a whole, Black fund managers don't even manage 2% of the total assets under management in the entire globe. There's a problem. There's a lot of work to come, but I'm super excited about some of these opportunities unveiling. So that's my thought on that one.
Yeah, happy to opine here. I think I'll just share this from a story standpoint. I think for me particularly, when we started Esusu, we spoke to like 300 VCs, and there was no other way. Sometimes the no was so painful at some point. It's like, yeah, it's gonna be no. But it was because we're solving a peculiar issue, right? Like for me, I grew up in the slums of Lagos, Nigeria, came to America. My mother and I walked into one of the biggest banks in Minneapolis to borrow money. We were turned away and had to go borrow money from a payday loan lender at over 400% interest rate. My mother pawned my father's wedding ring, and that's how we started our journey in this country. But that's a tough reality for the everyday sort of, traditional standard investor to understand that market opportunity, right? There's 45 million people in this country that do not have a credit score. The average debt in America is $92,000, including some subprime mortgage. If you do that math alone, no complex market sizing activity, that's over $4 trillion you can unlock in the marketplace, right? That's not only good for the country, it's not only good for the people that get access to capital, it's profitable for everyone involved. But the idea is when you start creating products around issues like this, which is what we do to establish or build people's credit scores, people don't get it, right? And that's why it's important for us to have more investors like Amani, right? That continue to say, wow, this is a revolutionary idea that can essentially proliferate certain kind of capital, right? And that's the kind of mindset we need to have. That's why you need the Concrete Rose of the world that can go out there and say, I know this problem. These problems are in my community and we can invest in it. So when you think about capital allocation, right, you need to talk to the pension funds, you need to talk to the endowments, you got to talk to the universities. Say you need to invest more in people like Amani, you need to invest in people like Sean Mendy at Concrete Rose, and invest more in Keisha Cash, at Impact America. That's the way we solve this issue, because no one really understands the issues in our communities like we do, right? My grandmother always says, you got to walk the walk to talk the talk. People can talk the talk, but when it comes time to write the check, people show their true colors. So everyone can talk about the facts that we're going through a racial reckoning. If you're not putting your money where your mouth is, you can check back and come back next time.
To that, I just had an idea, of something that I think also presents itself as an issue, an ongoing issue, and that's that idea of competition. I mean, competition, in my opinion, can be very healthy. It can be a good thing. But when it gets toxic, is when this mentality forms that there can only be one or few Black entrepreneurs, especially in tech, succeed. So when you think about this idea of elevating and amplifying, other emerging disruptive Black founders in tech, while also making sure that you're prioritizing your own business, how can those two ideas work in tandem? How can Black founders support each other and be united fronts in a way that's sort of beneficial to the community as a whole?
Okay, I'll start on this one because this is a pet peeve of mine. We, as people of color, are this. What you working on over there, homie? Oh man, it's mine. Don't worry about it. I'm good. Like, we don't share anything. Like, if you got an idea and you're about to go to market or you're a startup, you don't want to pass on that knowledge to your brother, your sister, your friends, your neighbors. You want to keep that to yourself because you're scared, because it's hard enough to get in as it is, right? So it's hard to get in, and you get through the door and you're like, I'm in. Lock the door behind you and all of that, and that's what I've learned that's happened. And what I've tried to do is not only keep the door open, break the lock, knock out all the windows, and tell the secret so everybody comes in and is in the same room. Because that's the only way we can scale this, right? You have to kind of show the next founder, the next startup, exactly what you're doing and how you did what you did to get where you are. Tell them those secrets so they don't have to go through the same hoops and, ladders and all the stuff that you had to deal with to get there. And I think that's one of our biggest problems is we don't share the information. Unlike other races, the Jewish community, the white community, the Asian community, they all stick together. If one comes in, and this is not a racial thing, but it's the honest truth. One has a store in the neighborhood and they figure it out. They figure out the tax situation. They figure out how they did this, how they go get the grants and the loans. They write it up and they pass it on, and they pass it on, and they pass it on. We need to do more of the same things, is giving that knowledge to everyone else so that we can build our own community of entrepreneurs, our own community of investors and, VCs that look like us to invest in us because we know and we've given that information. Okay, I'm done.
I have three quick examples, good and bad, of what happens in our community. First and foremost, Clubhouse was a platform that was very instrumental in me launching my raise. I got invited to the platform in August of last year. There were only about 6,000 people on the platform. And when I got there, the person that invited me, there were Black people on the platform, but some of the Black people didn't want other Black people on the platform because it was a platform that was highly populated with VCs and opportunity and all that kind of stuff. And one of the things that I did, I was like, I told everybody in Atlanta about Clubhouse and invited everybody, in the entertainment community I could think of, from Snoop Dogg to Van Lathan to Brian Michael Cox, all these different people, Cortez Bryant, all these people that I wanted to flood in here because I knew there's access to opportunity and capital. Since my Start Engine raise, the way that Angela Benton, who introduced me to Start Engine, and Dawn Dixon, who helped coach me, and Monique, who referred me to Start Engine, I have since referred 2 other founders, Black founders, to Start Engine. One of them, which is Don Cannon, who has an app called Tomorrow App, which I invested in too, to pass it on. And then thirdly, here's where the problem, I think, really comes in our community, is that I think all of us, and I will say collectively, our community, we all want to be home run hitters. We can't have a whole team of home run hitters, because everything that we try to do, we say we want to work collectively together, but when the opportunity comes, people don't want to participate with you. And I've heard this before. I've heard, like, if I'm going to make $1 billion, but someone's going to make, 20 million, they'll pass on the 20 million so that I don't get the $1 billion. Because a lot of times, if you're not the person that is the billionaire, you're not going to assist in being part of someone else's success that doesn't benefit you to the top. And the example that I had, and I'll leave every single name out of it, but in developing Fanbase, even before I raised money, I was speaking to some managers who had a lot of good artists, right? And they knew the concept of Fanbase. They knew it. Dope. Hey, when you guys gonna sign up? We're gonna put our artists on there. We're gonna do all these crazy things. And then right around January, they just disappeared, stopped communicating. I was like, what's going on? That's weird. Like, And then maybe like 2 weeks ago, a press release came out that those very same people went and did a deal with a white tech startup that's trying to do something similar to what I'm doing. And I'm like, wow. So rather than come in under something that I built, you're going to go and try to partner with a white corporation to be a competitor against me, which was like, that's the nature of the game that we're in. And so that's what we face is the lack of unity in our community, as opposed to trying to win together. People will say, well, I want to be the big fish. I want to be the big dog. So I'd rather go out and try to partner and be a big dog somewhere else rather than we all work together collectively.
Yeah, man, Isaac and Arabian, you guys have essentially shared it. I think for us at Esusu, and particularly for me, is the name Esusu itself is like a Yoruba saying in West Africa that means if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go together. And we live in a society whereby we're so divided by the little things. But if we spend so much time essentially hoarding all the successes and not opening doors, it's not about us, right? It's about the people that came before us, that opened the doors, that gave us the opportunities. And then it's also incumbent on us to open doors for others. Just because now we're in the game, right, does not mean we shouldn't open the doors for others to get into and succeed. Because I imagine a world whereby Amani's, son one day wants to test out an idea. That idea could fail, but he can reach out to Uncle Abbey and say, man, can I get $2 million? I'm like, absolutely, go test it out. Because that's how you build startups, right? You experiment, 8% of them are successful, and the rest fails. That's just the game we're in. But we don't even get an opportunity to be in the game in the first place. And the mentality of hoarding and not being a collectivist society, which is truly who we are, we're playing a different person's game, right? We are all from a theology, like from the African continent, and everything is all collectivist. It's like us, family focused. When we're playing an individual game, we're playing the wrong game and we're playing ourselves. So practically for me, it's like, look, my investors, I'm like, provided I'll vet what you have, send them a note. If they want to talk to you, they'll talk to you if it's a great opportunity, right? I have something called the FRC, Friend Resource Center. I raised my our Force Capital, my co-founder, how to talk to investors, the list you go through, how to structure a data room, all this stuff you got to do. So there are a lot of things I didn't know when I got in the game, right? And now I know a lot about it now. So let's all create templates of what has worked with us and share with anyone that reaches out. That's step one. That's going to go way, way, way ahead than any other thing. And number two is, if you have investors that invest in you and people reach out, ask them for their materials and send it to them. If they want to talk, let them talk. We cannot hoard success, right? We need to distribute it, because if you fall down one day and you're the only billionaire standing, or you're the only, multi-millionaire standing, then your children, once you leave this earth, might not have the same opportunities, right? It's a collectivist mindset. It's about us, because our futures are inextricably tied together. And until we get that, we're wasting our time.
Weighing in so candidly, because that is a topic I think that is so hushed. No one really wants to talk about that, but it's real. It is a real thing. So we have a question from someone in the audience. They're asking, so we have countless white VCs at the table right now, but can't get Black VCs to take a meeting to save my life. Any insight into why this is the case? Maybe it's a network issue. Curious to hear your thoughts. Anyone care to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I mean, so there's several things there, and prior to, I think, the community thing, 100% right. Absolutely love it, and you all kind of said everything that there is to say. Strongly agree there. Looking at, so a lot of times when I'm talking to diverse founders across the board, Black founders, right, like I always push to understand the anatomy of a no, right? And a lot of times for diverse founders who already struggle to raise capital, when I work with LPs, I heard about white men and women who went and raised $200 million or who raised $1 billion in half of a year, right? Okay, I hear of a Black fund, a Black GP, and on average, the funds are $10 million, $15 million, $20 million, right? Well, cash constraints genuinely become one of the reasons in which why a VC might say no. And oftentimes for diverse VCs, that's just far more frequently. There's so many phenomenal founders. Now, granted, like as to why the calls might not have happened, I couldn't speak to that one. However, I do think we're pretty big with Rare Breed and building in public, being open, honest, right? Being open to cold emails, cold DMs, right? Like half of our portfolio came from cold Twitter DMs, honestly, right? Like that is the beauty of this space, and that's some to do. But I think in that mix, like there's so many reasons why a no might actually happen. But if you're not getting to that meeting, then either that VC just might not be for you. And that's also okay. You might be saving yourself 30 minutes and 30 minutes, 45 minutes, right? Or whatever be the case, trying to chase a VC down who doesn't want to do anything for you and or won't actually write that check.
I'm with that. Also, I come from the music industry, and so I tend to look at VCs as like the record label, right? So they put up the money, depending on how hungry they are to invest in your startup. They might have a good bit of say-so in what you're able to do. And I look at venture crowdfunding as going independent, selling shares out the trunk of your car. And so when you go that route, you definitely put VCs on notice that I don't necessarily need you to be, all the way successful, but VCs definitely provide a lot of connections, insight, resources to help you grow your business. And that's the relationship that you should have as a founder with your VC. But sometimes the VC game can be predatory. They can look at you as a flip. We come in for 2 million. We want to get out at 10. You made some money, take the 3 or 4 or 5 million you got and go build something else. That's cool. But I like the fact that venture crowdfunding is disruptive, and it doesn't, give all this power and all this stature to VCs anymore. It's like, cool, because, we've been getting calls about Series A for Fanbase. I think it's a little premature, but people are inquiring. But also, Start Engine is an opportunity where you can raise in a Reg A plus tier 2 up to $50 million. So imagine being able to, in our crowdfunding campaign that we did with Fanbase, I only raised capital from the United States of America. So imagine being able to raise capital worldwide for your startup, and maintain a significant control of your company. At the same time, have people that become spokespeople for what you're building, especially in social media. There's no better person than like the users actually owning part of the platform and have a chance to do that. And I think that should be something that a lot of platforms consider doing moving forward, but that's the case. So I like the disruption that crowdfunding has. So VCs you can get no's, and I got no's from VCs in those first couple months of 2020. They were like, oh, well, it doesn't look like, they'll seek you out and then they'll shit on you. They're like, oh yeah, but nah. And it was like, okay, I'm used to this. It's the music business. It happens. But when venture crowdfunding came along, you really, like I said, you've gone independent. And so now when Fanbase does scale, the conversation with the VC is entirely different. I got a hit record without you. So if you want to sign me now, the terms are different. It's a different conversation than when I needed your money. Well, now I don't need your money. You want to be a part of what I'm building. And so that's the kind of perspective that I have on it. So you can always consider, even though people look for VCs, consider platforms like Start Engine and WeFunder and financing your campaign that way.
Yeah, I think one thing I would say is, and this is a bit different, I made a lot of mistakes. My co-founder and I, when we were raising our initial round of financing, I would be the first person to tell you our story wasn't necessarily the cleanest. Because the issue with VC is they have something called mental models, right? They go raise money and they promise that, a particular company will return the fund. So if I raise, $100 million, you're looking for that unicorn that can generate $200 million for you, and you're placing bets. So I think we also need to take a step back and know how the game is played, right? So it's like, if you're to make maybe grounded in Isaac and Arabian Prince terms, right? If you're trying to produce a hit record and you know what the market is looking for, the story you're going to sell to Capitol Records, for example, to make that happen, so they can jump on it and help you get it out there. I would admit I did a poor job on my co-founder in the first place, and we got a lot of no's. Number two is the ideas was also great, and we still got a lot of no's. So one thing I would also just caveat is we need to get really good at telling our stories. And number two, we also need to work together before any of our friends or, counterparts in the marketplace go out there to raise money. Even in front of Black VCs, we help them create a very succinct story. So that's step one. Step two is the reason why VCs, especially Black VCs, are struggling to either write checks or meet with people is because of what Amani said. The capital allocated to them is infinitesimal compared to what they can allocate. So they're always protective because guess what? If Amani gets $25 million to invest over 2 years, and if none of those companies become home run, we're not going to see like 20 Amanis anymore. Yeah, that's just the name of the game. So we have to also empathize. So my feedback to this would be like, before you go out there and raise money, go date first. Just say, you know what do you look for in companies? What's your fund model? What's your return on capital? Right? What's your expectation from your LPs? And once you get that, it becomes a conversation. They say, well, this is some of the things we're looking for. This is how we think about companies. And you take all that information. Next month, you're like, yeah, this is how we're thinking about. This is our growth model. You get the metrics they care about, right? And that's something we didn't do for the first, second year when we started our company. And now we're learning when we're about to be a Series A company. You're like, darn, it doesn't really make sense. So we got to pay attention to the mentor model. The biases are crazy, but we can shrink that biases once we get with the mentor model. And the last thing, if people don't invest in you, outperform and let them regret not coming in. I have a lot of people that my co-founder and I went to, and they're like, no, we don't believe in this thing. And now they're begging to get calls with us, right? So outperform as a founder, do your own thing. Isaac is going to be successful. Arabian Prince is going to be successful. Amani is going to be successful. You're all going to be successful because you have something you're utterly passionate about. So don't let the nose of VCs, and coming from someone that's gotten over 300 and continues to get them today, don't let that deter you at all. But we also got to get smart in terms of how to tell the story because it's going to put us 10 miles ahead.
Amen. So we have a little bit of time left, and I always love to end on an actionable note. So I'm going to ask you all, when you think of the most productive resource thus far that you've used, whether it's a mentor, it's an incubator, whether it's something tangible, what was that resource? Just for people who are listening who just want some guidance on that front. One resource that's been productive thus far.
For me is the people that know more than I do. Jewel Burks Solomon, right? Great woman, part pick, sold to Amazon, head of Google for Startups North America, Barry Givens, Justin Dawkins, Monique Idolette, Angela Benton and Dawn Dixon. All of them collectively, they let me come to them with the most ridiculous, questions. Why does my CTO need to own part of my company? Because when you go raise money, people have to know that there's somebody there that can build what you're saying you can build. And if they feel like that person can just walk away, like they're just like they look at you as like a client and not someone that has skin in the game. They were teaching me the game. They were teaching me about decks, not too wordy, all these things, board seats, even Steve Jobs got voted out of his own company. That's not, like that, like understanding how the game works. Like they gave me the game. So always look to people the people that have done it before you, that are comfortable in letting you know their mistakes, so they can pass that knowledge on to you, the mistakes that I made, and so on and so forth, because it made my journey so much easier. It was still hard. The work has to be done in the product that you build, but at least knowing the hard questions getting answered by brilliant people that have done, phenomenal things and know more than you. I'm always a student. I'm going to continue to be that. They'll continue to be a resource as we grow. So the people that have done it before you is a great resource.
Great. Abbey, what about you?
Yeah, one resource that has been incredibly helpful to me is really investors. One investor that has a close place in my heart is like Sean Mendy at Concrete Rose. That man is just, for me, he's a legend, man. Because some people just sit you down and tell you how the game is played, right? And then they walk you through the intricacies and you don't get emotional about certain things, and it preserves your mental health. So I think in what we are doing, we need mentors. It's a collective thing, because it's going to take Black folks, it's going to take white folks, it's going to take everybody, right, for us to build $100 billion company. So we got to be able to think, expansive like that. So in my mind, man, like it is really, really crucial for us to have mentors, particularly if you're an entrepreneur, investors that just show you the way. They tell you what they are going through, you empathize with them, you can craft your narrative. And when it comes time to raise money, you're not pitching to people, you're just having conversation about what's possible in the world. So like the biggest thing is, like Isaac said, people have done it before. I invested in Don's. Don is an amazing human being. We went to Tulsa together. We traveled Africa together. Amazing person. But it's people, man. And for me, it's investors that are writing those checks and can be with you, along the way whenever you need the money to build what you're building also. So one person I want to give a shout out to is definitely Sean Mendy.
I'm sensing a theme here, which is okay. That's good. Amani, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree with people. Like, I overemphasize building community, nurturing community, and using your community. Such an important, and going back to Isaac's earlier point, like, understand success has different levels, but they're horizontal, right? Like it doesn't necessarily mean that because you're $1 billion company or you're a $20 million, $100 million company, right? One is better than the other, right? What success looks like for you is fine. Like, and don't get caught in the rat trap of like, I got to keep up with the Joneses and I got to go and raise more money because everyone else did, right? And as you move around, like, I think one of the most useful resources that I've come across is Twitter. Honestly, we've raised almost our entire fund purely from Twitter, right? Like being, and Andrea Clinton asked a question in the chat in regards to kind of, finding who do you bring in, right, to prepare you to approach an investor, or should you be looking for brokers, right? Like, you should be looking for community. Build that community and you'll find like-minded founders who have this community approach and who want to give it to you honest, right? Like, who want to be straight up, be real with everything that's going on in the ecosystem, what you need to do, the mistakes that they made, and making sure that you don't make those mistakes, because the next generation should never have it harder than you did. Never, right? Like, find that community, find that tribe. They will help you with your deck. They will make the connections for you. They will help ensure that you're in the right rooms. This entire ecosystem is a silo. You don't have to get venture capital to be successful, right? There's plenty of other options that are actually out there. But if you don't know, right, you don't know. And if you're not in the bubble, you'll never know until you find somebody who's willing to bridge the gap between the two. So I would double down on building that community. And I think Twitter has probably been the easiest way, low barrier to entry, and you can talk to anybody at any point in time. So that's my last piece there, and dive into the community. I think it'll be fun.
Amazing. Arabian, wrap up.
Yeah, I'll be brief. And I'll piggyback on what everybody else is saying. It's knowledge. It's finding the resources, finding the communities, and the way to do it is, like you said, Twitter. It's the internet, and I tell everybody, I'm like, yeah, you may not be able to get to Rosewood, Sand Hill. You may not be able to get to those people, those VCs up in Silicon Valley or wherever you're looking for. But you got the internet, and you can go and do all your researching. You can go and find the startups that made it, and then you can find out how they did it, because most of them are telling their stories, hopefully. Or you can go into the forums. You can go into the different social media bubbles and find out, and eventually you'll get there. But a lot of people just go, I got an idea, I asked somebody to give me money and they said no, so now I'm pissed and I'm not going to do anything. You got to do your research. You got to really, really get out there and grind and hustle if you really believe in your product.
What a perfect note to end on. I have to really thank you all for this candid conversation. Thank you, because this is something that we need to be candid and authentic about. And it's also something that needs to go way beyond this panel, right? I encourage everyone who's watching to continue these conversations, because this is not temporary. It's something that should be ongoing. So thank you all for being so candid. I know I enjoyed and took away a lot from that, and I appreciate you all joining me today. Thank you.
Thank you.